We all have that one neighbor, right? The one who leaves their Christmas lights up until March. Or the guy who mows his lawn at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. You learn to live with it. It's just part of the suburban tax we all pay. But what do you do when your neighbors never make a sound? When they never leave their property? And when the only time you see them is when you check your security camera footage and realize they were standing on your front lawn while you were sleeping? This is a story about boundaries. It's about the line between the living and the dead. And it's about what happens when technology, the very thing we use to feel safe, captures something that breaks the rules of reality. My name is Shane. I live in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. And after what happened last January, I don't use a Ring camera anymore. So let me paint the picture for you. I've lived in this house for about 4 years. It's a standard cookie-cutter 2-story in a quiet part of town. You know the vibe. HOA fees, manicured lawns, and Amazon delivery trucks circling like sharks every afternoon. But my lot is a little different. I'm on the edge of the development. So, directly across the street from my front porch, there aren't any other houses. There's a cemetery. Oak Hill. Now, before you say anything, yeah, it's a little creepy. But honestly, it's great. The neighbors are quiet. They don't complain about my music, and nobody parks in front of my driveway. I used to joke with my buddies that I had the best view in town because nobody across the street was looking back at me. I work from home as a graphic designer. My setup is in the front room, facing the street. In January 2026, the weather in PA was brutal. Gray skies, freezing rain, just that miserable slush that refuses to melt. I was in hermit mode. I barely left the house for a week. Tuesday, January 12th. It was a normal day. I was grinding through some edits for a client, chugging coffee, just trying to stay awake. I was waiting on a courier to drop off a hard drive, so I had my phone propped up next to my keyboard with the Ring app open. I'm paranoid about porch pirates. We had a guy in a hoodie swipe a package off my step back in December, so I keep the motion sensitivity cranked all the way up. If a squirrel sneezes 3 houses down, my phone goes off. Around 2 p.m., I got the notification. Motion detected, front door. I figured it was the FedEx guy. I didn't even look immediately. I hit save on my project, stretched my back, and waited for the doorbell to ring. But it didn't. I waited. Nothing. No truck engine, no footsteps, no knocking like a SWAT team that delivery guys usually do. So, I picked up my phone to check the live feed. I figured maybe they just tossed the box and ran. But when I opened the app, the porch was empty. I frowned. I hate when the camera glitches. I scrolled back to the History tab to see what triggered the sensor. The thumbnail for the clip just looked like the empty street. I clicked it. The video started. For the first 5 seconds, it was just the wind blowing some dead leaves across the driveway. Then, I saw it. On the sidewalk across the street, the one that runs right along the cemetery fence, something was moving. It wasn't a person. I mean, it was shaped like a person. It had a head, shoulders, legs, but it was see-through. It looked like a smudge on the lens, or maybe like heat haze on a hot road. But it was freezing outside. I watched it walk from the left side of the frame to the right, and the movement was wrong. It wasn't walking like you or me. It was gliding. No bounce in the step, just a smooth, linear slide, like a cutout being pulled on a string. And here's the part that made my stomach drop. I could see the cemetery fence through its chest. The black iron bars were perfectly visible behind it, distorted just a little bit, like I was looking through a dirty window. I sat there in my office, which was perfectly warm, but I suddenly felt freezing cold. I tried to rationalize it. I'm a tech guy, right? I told myself. Okay, Shane, chill out. It's a compression artifact. The Wi-Fi dipped, the bitrate dropped, and the camera just didn't render the guy's coat properly. That's a thing, right? I replayed the video. I zoomed in. That's when I noticed the snow. There was a light dusting of snow on the sidewalk from that morning. If an actual human being had walked there, they would have left footprints. I ran to the window and looked out. The sidewalk was pristine, smooth white snow, untouched. But on my phone screen, I was watching a man walk right over it. I didn't get any work done the rest of the day. I kept staring at that sidewalk. I sent the clip to a buddy of mine who works in video editing. I didn't tell him it was a ghost thing. I just asked, "Hey man, why is my camera glitching like this?" He texted back 10 minutes later. "That's not a glitch. A glitch creates blocks or pixelation. That thing has a shadow." I checked the video again. He was right. Faintly, on the grass beside the sidewalk, the figure cast a soft, gray shadow. A glitch doesn't block the sun. That night, I went down a rabbit hole. I hopped on the local library's digital archive. I wanted to know about Oak Hill Cemetery. I wanted to know if there was a reason my camera was picking up static from the other side of the road. I found some weird stuff. And I mean, weird. Apparently, back in the 1950s, there was a dispute about the property line. The cemetery wanted to expand toward the road, my road. They actually started digging a few plots right up against where the sidewalk is now. But the project got scrapped. I found a digitized letter to the editor in the local paper from 1954. It was from a former groundskeeper. He wrote that the soil on the north end, the side facing my house, was sour. He said, "We dig the hole, and the next morning the dirt is back in it. The ground pushes it back out. The tenants don't want to rest there." The north end. That was exactly where the figure in my video was walking. I closed my laptop. It felt like the room had gotten darker. It's one thing to joke about living near a graveyard. It's another thing to realize that the ground across the street has a history of rejecting things. For the next 2 days, nothing happened. The camera was quiet. The street was empty. But the vibe in the house had changed. You know how animals can sense a storm coming? My dog, Buster, a golden retriever who loves everybody, wouldn't go near the front door. He'd stand in the hallway and just growl, low in his throat, staring at the wood. Thursday night came. I went to bed around midnight. I woke up at 3:14 a.m. I didn't wake up groggy. I woke up wide awake, heart pounding, like someone had just clapped their hands right next to my ear. The house was dead silent, but I had this overwhelming feeling that I was being watched. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening. It was faint, gentle, like someone drumming their fingernails on a table. But it wasn't coming from inside the room. It was coming from the window. Now, here's the kicker. My bedroom is on the second floor. There is no balcony. There is no tree branch near that window. It's a straight drop to the concrete driveway. I froze. I literally couldn't move. It's that primal fear, you know? The kind that turns you into a statue. I slowly turned my head toward the window. The blinds were closed, but the street lamp outside cast a shadow against the slats. I saw a silhouette. It looked like a hand, a long, thin hand. It was pressing against the glass, creating a shadow on the blinds. And it was moving. It wasn't knocking to be let in. It was knocking to let me know it was there. I pulled the covers over my head like a 5-year-old. I'm a grown man, and I hid under the blanket. I waited for the glass to shatter. I waited for the alarm to go off. Eventually, the tapping stopped. When I checked the window the next morning, on the outside of the glass, there were smudges, greasy streaks, like someone had dragged oily fingers down the pane, 20 feet off the ground. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed a sanity check. I saw my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, out salting his driveway. He's this grumpy old guy, lived here since the Reagan administration. The kind of guy who yells at you if your trash can is 2 inches over the property line. I walked over. "Hey, Mr. Henderson," he grunted. "Shane?" "Quick question," I said, trying to sound casual. "My Ring camera has been acting up lately, glitching out, showing weird shadows. Yours doing anything funky?" Mr. Henderson stopped shoveling. He leaned on the handle and looked at me. He didn't look confused. He looked annoyed. "You caught the walker, didn't you?" he said. I blinked. "The what?" "The walker," he said, like he was talking about the mailman. "Comes around every January when the ground freezes hard, messes with the Wi-Fi, sets off the car alarms." My jaw nearly hit the pavement. You know about it?" "We all know about it," he muttered, gesturing to the other houses on the block. "We just don't pay it any mind. It's just an echo, kid, like a movie playing on a loop. It walks the perimeter, checks the gates, and fades out." He looked me dead in the eye. "But here's a tip," he said. "Don't try to film it again. It's shy, and when people try to take its picture, it tends to get closer. It wants to see who's watching." He went back to shoveling. I walked back to my house feeling sick. I had done exactly what he said not to do. I had recorded it. I had zoomed in. I had analyzed it. I had given it my attention. And now, it was coming closer. That evening, around 6 p.m., the sun was down. I was in the kitchen making dinner. Ding dong. The actual doorbell rang, not the phone notification, the physical bell on the wall. I jumped about a foot in the air. I grabbed my phone. Motion detected. Front door. I opened the live view. The porch light was on, but the porch was empty. Then the audio crackled. It sounded like wet boots on concrete, heavy. "Hello?" I said into the mic feature. "Who is that?" The audio spiked with static, a high-pitched squeal that made me drop the phone. I picked it up. The screen was frozen, but it wasn't frozen on the empty porch. Something had moved in front of the lens. It was blurry, too close to focus, but it was gray, and it looked like skin. It was an eye, a milky, pale eye, taking up the entire frame, staring directly into the lens. Someone was standing on my porch, pressing their face against the camera. I grabbed a baseball bat and ran to the front door. I don't know what I was planning to do. I looked through the peephole. Nothing, just the empty street and the cemetery gates across the road. But on the glass of the peephole, there was condensation, like someone had just breathed on it from the other side. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with all the lights on. Nothing else happened. The walker, or whatever it was, had made its point. It knew I was watching, so it came over to watch me back. I still live in the house. The mortgage rates are too high to move, And honestly, where am I going to go? But things are different now. I went into my Ring settings and turned off motion alerts. I don't want to know. And if you walk past my house today, you'll see a little piece of black electrical tape over the camera lens. My friends ask me why I have a security camera if I'm just going to blind it. I tell them it's broken. But the truth is, I'm not trying to keep people out. I'm just trying to stop myself from looking at what's already there. If you have a doorbell camera, do yourself a favor. Check your settings. And maybe, just maybe, don't look too closely at the notifications you get in the middle of the night. They say the most dangerous time in a relationship isn't when you're fighting, it's when you leave. We all like to think that distance equals safety. You move a state away, you change your number, you get a new apartment with a deadbolt and a Ring camera. You tell yourself that the miles on the highway act like a filter, that the bad memories and the bad people can't follow you across state lines. But obsession doesn't care about geography. And while you're busy building a new life, someone else might be busy building a cage. This story isn't about ghosts. It isn't about a monster under the bed. It's about the man who rented the house down the street. It's about the sound of a car engine you thought you'd never hear again. And it's about finding out that for the last week of your life, you were already living inside a trap. You just didn't know it yet. My name is Genevieve, and in the fall of 2024, I found out that a nightmare can sign a lease. To understand why I ended up in Arizona, you have to understand what I was running from in Utah. I'd spent the better part of 2023 in a relationship with a guy named Zachary. On paper, Zach seemed fine, maybe a little intense, maybe a little too interested in where I was every second of the day, but I chalked that up to him being protective. We've all made excuses for red flags because we wanted them to just be quirks, but protective turned into possessive real quick, and possessive turned into, well, let's just say the police got involved. By September of 2023, there were charges: kidnapping, assault, real heavy stuff. The court system in Utah did what it does. They let him out on pretrial release, but they slapped an ankle monitor on him, a GPS tether. For a while, that black plastic band around his leg was the only thing that let me sleep at night. It was like a magical force field. If he stepped out of line, the alarm would sound, the cops would roll, and I'd be safe. But I couldn't stay in Utah. Every grocery store, every gas station. I felt like I was seeing his truck. I needed a hard reset. So, in late 2024, I packed everything I owned into a sedan and drove 600 miles south to Glendale, Arizona. If you've never been to Glendale, it's basically endless suburbs. Stucco houses, tile roofs, strip malls. It's quiet. It's boring. And that is exactly what I wanted. I wanted boring. I found a nice rental in a quiet neighborhood. I got a job. I started meeting new people. For the first time in a year, I stopped checking my rearview mirror every time I turned a corner. October in Arizona is actually kind of nice. The heat finally breaks. People start putting up Halloween decorations. I remember walking out to my car on the morning of October 25th. The air was crisp. My neighbor was putting up fake spider webs on his bushes. He waved at me, and I waved back. It felt normal. I remember thinking, I made it. I'm finally just a face in the crowd. But looking back now, I realize how fragile that feeling was. I was living in a bubble. I didn't know that 500 miles away, in a house in Payson, Utah, a pair of wire cutters had just snapped through a GPS strap. And I didn't know that a gray passenger car was already on the I-15 south, doing 80 miles an hour, headed straight for my new zip code. The weirdness started small. It was about 3 days before Halloween. I was coming home from work, pulling into my driveway. I have this habit, probably leftover trauma from Utah, where I always scan the street before I get out of the car. There was a car parked 3 houses down, a gray sedan, not a junker, just a generic, boring rental car type of vehicle. I didn't recognize it, but again, it's a neighborhood, people have guests. But as I walked to my front door, I got that feeling. You know the one. The prickly heat on the back of your neck. The sensation that eyes are touching you. I turned around. The street was empty. The windows of the gray sedan were tinted dark. I couldn't see inside. I went inside, locked the door, and told myself I was being paranoid. You're in Arizona, Jen, I thought. Zach is in Utah with a bracelet on his leg. You're safe. The next day, things got tangible. I went out to my car to go to the gym. I walked around the back to throw my bag in the trunk, and I noticed something on the bumper. It was a smudge, a clean spot in the dust. Arizona is dusty. Your car gets covered in a fine layer of grit within 24 hours of washing it. But right near the license plate, there was a smudge, like someone had rubbed their thumb against the plastic, or like someone had reached up under the bumper. My stomach dropped. I knelt down and looked under the chassis. I ran my hand along the inside of the frame. Nothing, just dirt and grease. I stood up, shaking my head. Stop it, I told myself. You're spiraling. But then came the phone call. It was October 30th. I was in the kitchen making dinner. My phone rang. It was a local Arizona area code. I picked up. Hello? Silence. Not dead air. Not a disconnect. Active silence. I could hear breathing. Slow, steady, rhythmic breathing. And in the background, very faintly, I heard a sound that froze my blood. It was the sound of a turn signal. Who is this? I asked, my voice shaking. The breathing stopped. Then a voice. It was distorted, maybe muffled by a cloth, or maybe just low and raspy. Nice decorations, the voice said. I dropped the phone. I ran to the window and ripped the blinds open. My neighbor across the street had just put up a giant inflatable pumpkin. The caller wasn't in Utah. The caller was watching my house. I called the police immediately. The Glendale dispatcher was nice, but she gave me the standard speech. Without a specific threat or a name, there's not much we can do. We'll send a patrol car by. A patrol car did come by about an hour later. They shined a spotlight on the street. The gray sedan was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room with all the lights off, peering through the crack in the curtains. Every time a car drove by, I flinched. But the real horror wasn't what I was seeing. It was what I wasn't seeing. I assumed if Zach was here, he'd be sleeping in his car, or staying at a Motel 6 by the highway. I didn't know that he hadn't just come to watch. He had come to move in. Halloween morning, October 31st, 2024. I woke up to my phone blowing up, but it wasn't a prank caller this time. It was the police, but not the Glendale police. It was the Payson Police Department, from Utah. Ms. Agard, the detective said, we need you to listen carefully. Zachary Priest has cut his monitor. My knees gave out. I actually sank to the floor in my kitchen. When? I asked. About a week ago, he said. We raided his place. He's gone. And Genevieve, we found a notepad. It had your address on it. Your new address. The world started spinning. He knew. He knew exactly where I was. You need to lock your doors, the detective said. We've contacted Glendale PD. They are on their way to you right now. I hung up and scrambled to check the locks. Front door, back door, windows. I grabbed a kitchen knife, which felt ridiculously small in my hand, and backed into the corner of the living room. 10 minutes later, I saw the lights, blue and red flashing against my living room wall. I peeked out. There were 3 squad cars swarming the street, but they weren't pulling into my driveway. They were surrounding a car parked 2 houses down, the gray sedan. I watched through the window, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I saw officers drawing their weapons. I saw them shouting commands. Driver, put your hands out of the window. Do it now. I couldn't see the driver. The tint was too dark. For a second, nothing happened. The street was dead silent, just the hum of the police engines. Then, a sound shattered the morning. It sounded like a firecracker or a gunshot. The police swarmed the car. One officer smashed the driver's side window with a baton. They dragged a body out onto the asphalt. It was him. It was Zachary. He was bleeding. He'd tried to end it. He'd put a gun to his own chest when he saw the badges. I watched the paramedics load him into an ambulance. I watched them tape off the street. I felt a wave of relief, so strong it almost made me vomit. It's over, I thought. He found me, but they caught him. He's going to jail. I'm safe. I walked out to the police line. An officer came over to me. He looked pale, shaken. Is he alive? I asked. He's in critical condition, the officer said, but he'll survive. Did you find a gun? I asked. Yeah, the officer said. He looked back at the gray sedan. We found a gun, and we found some other things. What other things? The officer hesitated. Tracking devices. Looks like he was planning to tag your car. I shivered. That explained the smudge on my bumper. Well, I said, trying to steady my voice. At least he was living in his car. He must have been miserable. The officer looked at me. His expression was grim. Ms. Agard, he said softly. He wasn't living in his car. I frowned. What do you mean? Did he have a hotel room? The officer pulled a set of keys out of an evidence bag. We found a lease agreement in the glove box, he said, and a set of house keys. He pointed down the street, not to my house, but to a house about 4 blocks away, a nice, nondescript rental home in the same neighborhood. He rented a house, Genevieve. He's been living 4 blocks away from you for 5 days. The police executed a search warrant on that rental house that afternoon. They wouldn't let me go near it. They said it was an active crime scene. But later, through the court documents and the attorneys, I found out what was inside. I think about that house every single day. I think about the fact that I probably drove past it on my way to work. I might have even seen the lights on inside. It wasn't a bachelor pad. It wasn't a place to sleep. It was a bunker. In the living room, they found surveillance equipment, monitors. He had cameras set up, but it was the back bedroom that haunts me. They found restraints, heavy-duty zip ties, rope, handcuffs. They found weapons, more than just the gun he had in the car. And they found notes. This wasn't a crime of passion. He didn't come to Arizona to yell at me. He didn't come to key my car. He rented that house because he needed a place to keep me. The detectives told me his plan. It's called instrumental stalking. He was going to wait for the right moment. Maybe when I was coming home from the gym. Maybe when I was taking out the trash. He was going to grab me, and he wasn't going to take me back to Utah. He wasn't going to drive me out into the desert. He was going to take me 4 blocks down the street, to a house he legally rented, to a room he had prepared. He had set up a secondary life. He paid a deposit. He signed utilities. He acted like a normal member of the community, all while building a prison cell for his ex-girlfriend. If the Payson police hadn't called, if that detective hadn't found that notepad, I would have walked into my house on Halloween night, and I probably never would have walked out. Zachary Priest was indicted in February 2025. Attempted kidnapping, stalking. He's sitting in a cell now, waiting for trial. But I don't live in Glendale anymore. I moved again. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I don't have social media. And every time I sign a lease on a new apartment, I don't just check the locks. I check the neighbors. I look at the houses down the street, and I wonder who's renting them. I wonder if the guy unloading boxes is just a guy, or if he's building something. Because the scariest thing about a monster isn't that they look scary. It's that they look like everyone else. They drive gray sedans. They wave at you when they're putting up decorations. And sometimes they have the keys to the house right next door. There is a concept in architecture called the aquarium effect. It's a simple idea. When you are inside a lit room at night, the windows turn into mirrors. You look at the glass, and all you see is your own reflection. You see your furniture, your TV, your family. You feel safe because you are enclosed. But from the outside, in the dark, the glass is transparent. To the person standing in your backyard, you are on a stage. They can see what you're eating. They can see what you're watching. They can see when you go to the kitchen, and they can see when you head up the stairs to go to sleep. We live our lives assuming that if someone was watching us, we would know. We trust that we would feel eyes on us. But that's a lie we tell ourselves to sleep at night. My name is Mark. I live in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and in January of 2026, my neighborhood found out the hard way that the glass we use to keep the cold out doesn't keep the monsters out. This is the story of the man who didn't just watch. He wanted us to know he was watching. I've lived on McCullough Lane for about 3 years now. It's a nice area, not too fancy, not too rundown. It's one of those dense suburban pockets you find all over Montgomery County. You know the type, rows of townhouses packed together like sardines with tiny little postage stamps for backyards. The layout is pretty standard. Front door faces the street. Back door faces a communal easement or a small patch of woods. And almost every single house has the same feature. A big sliding glass door on the ground level leading out to the patio. I liked the glass door. It let in a ton of light during the day. In the summer, I'd leave it open with the screen door shut to get a breeze going. It felt open, airy. My wife Sarah and I have a routine. I work in IT, usually remote a few days a week, and she's a nurse with shifting hours. We're night owls. We usually stay up late watching movies or gaming in the living room, which is right off that back patio. December 2025 was a weird month. It was unseasonably warm for a few weeks, then freezing cold. The holidays came and went. It was that quiet lull period between Christmas and New Year's where nobody really knows what day it is. The vibe in the neighborhood was sleepy. A lot of people were away visiting family, so the parking lots were half empty. It felt peaceful. But looking back, I realize how exposed we were. See, the thing about our neighborhood is that the backyards connect. There's no big fence separating the blocks. There's just a grassy strip, maybe a few trees, and a drainage ditch. If you wanted to, you could walk from one end of Silk Cotton Way all the way down to McCullough Lane without ever stepping on a sidewalk. You could stay in the shadows the whole time. I never thought about it. I treated my backyard like it was private property. If I was in the kitchen at midnight getting a glass of water, I didn't think twice about the fact that the blinds were open. I remember one night specifically, Christmas Eve, actually, December 24th. I was up late wrapping some last-minute gifts. It was maybe 2 a.m. Sarah was already asleep upstairs. I was in the living room, surrounded by wrapping paper and Scotch tape. I had the TV on low volume. I had this moment where I just stopped. I looked up at the sliding glass door. The vertical blinds were open about halfway. Beyond the glass, it was pitch black. For a split second, I thought I saw something move. Just a shift in the darkness, like a shadow detaching itself from a tree trunk. I stared at the spot for a good 10 seconds. Nothing. Just the wind moving the branches. I chuckled to myself. "You're watching too many scary movies, Mark," I thought. I finished wrapping the gifts, turned off the lights, and went to bed. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't paranoid. At that exact moment, 2 blocks away, a neighbor of mine was waking up to a nightmare. I didn't find out about the December 24th incident until weeks later, when the police report started circulating on the neighborhood Facebook group. Apparently, at 3:46 in the morning, less than 2 hours after I went to bed, a woman on the next street over walked into her kitchen. She lived in a ground floor unit, just like mine. She hadn't pulled her curtains all the way shut. She was getting a glass of milk, half asleep. She turned toward the sliding glass door. Standing there, pressed right up against the glass, was a man. He wasn't trying to break in. He wasn't jiggling the handle. He was just standing there. The police report said he was exposing himself. Imagine that. You're in your pajamas, in the safety of your own home, on Christmas morning. And 3 feet away, separated only by a 1/4 inch of tempered glass, is a stranger getting off on your fear. She screamed. Obviously, the guy didn't panic. He didn't scramble away like a frightened animal. He just turned and walked into the darkness. Casual, like he was finishing a cigarette break. By the time the cops arrived, he was gone. They patrolled the area, shined their spotlights into the woods, but you know how it goes. "We'll file a report, ma'am. Keep your doors locked." Life went on. The holidays ended. We all went back to work. But the atmosphere on the street changed. You could feel it. People started closing their blinds a little earlier. The Nextdoor app was blowing up with people asking about motion sensor lights. I started being more careful too. I checked the lock on the slider every single night before bed. Locked, safe, but a lock only stops someone from coming in. It doesn't stop them from looking in. January 7th. That was the day everything escalated. It was a Wednesday. I was working late in my office, which faces the front of the house. Sarah was downstairs in the living room reading. Around 6:40 p.m., Sarah came running up the stairs. She looked pale. "Mark," she said, her voice shaking. "I think there's someone in the backyard." I jumped up. "What? Did you hear something?" "No," she said. "I saw a shadow. I was sitting on the couch, and I saw a shadow move across the curtains." Now, our curtains aren't blackout. They're those sheer white ones. If someone walks past the patio light, they cast a silhouette. I grabbed a heavy flashlight, a mag light I keep in the drawer, and went downstairs. I felt that rush of adrenaline, that mix of protective anger and fear. I walked to the back door. I didn't open it immediately. I peeked through the slit in the curtains. Nothing. Just the empty concrete patio and the 2 plastic chairs we keep out there. I unlocked the door and slid it open. The cold winter air hit me like a slap. "Hello?" I yelled. "Who's out here?" Silence. I stepped out onto the patio, shining my light into the common area behind the house. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the dead grass and the bare trees. There was nobody there. I went back inside and locked the door. It was probably a deer, I told Sarah, or maybe a neighbor walking their dog. She didn't look convinced. "It looked tall, Mark. It looked like a person." We spent the rest of the night with every single light in the house turned on. We felt vulnerable. But here's the thing about that night. We weren't the only ones he visited. While I was scanning my backyard at 7 p.m., the guy was already moving on. He was moving to Silcotton Way, and he had upgraded his toolkit. If you know anything about criminology, or if you watch enough true crime, you know that peeping toms are usually passive. They want to be ghosts. They hide in the bushes. They use binoculars. The whole thrill is seeing without being seen. But this guy, Steven, he was different. He was evolving. Later that same night, January 7th, around 10:30 p.m., a family on Silcotton Way had an experience that honestly terrifies me more than a break-in. They were in their living room, TV on, relaxing. Suddenly, the room exploded with light. It wasn't the overhead light turning on. It was a beam, a concentrated, high-powered beam of white light blasting through their sliding glass door. The guy wasn't hiding in the dark anymore. He was standing on their patio, holding a tactical flashlight, and he was shining it into their home. Think about the psychology of that for a second. When you shine a light into a dark room, you see everything. But when you shine a light into a lit room, you blind the people inside. The family froze. They looked at the window, but all they could see was the glare, a wall of white. They couldn't see if he was holding a weapon. They couldn't see his face. They just knew that someone was standing right there watching them panic. It was aggressive. It was a power move. He wasn't just peeping anymore. He was hunting. He was saying, "I can see you. I can touch you with this light, and there is nothing you can do about it." The homeowner, a dad like me, ran to the door. He shouted. The light clicked off. By the time the dad got the door open, the backyard was empty again, just the darkness. This became the pattern, the flashlight technique. He would prowl the neighborhood. He would find a house where the aquarium effect was strong, and then he would hit them with the light. It creates a primal panic. You feel like a deer in the headlights. You feel exposed. The neighborhood Facebook group went from concerned to hysterical. Did anyone else see a light in their yard last night? I found footprints in the mud by my AC unit. Someone tried my door handle at 3 a.m. We were under siege, and we didn't even know what he looked like. He was just a silhouette, a shadow with a flashlight. I started losing sleep. Every time a car drove by and its headlights swept across my living room wall, I flinched. I started keeping a baseball bat next to the couch. I told Sarah, "If you see him again, don't look. Just run upstairs and call 911. She asked me, What if he tries to come in? I didn't have an answer for that. And then came January 15th. January 15th, a Thursday. It was bitter cold that night, the kind of cold that hurts your face. I was in bed early. Sarah was working a night shift, so I was alone in the house. I had double-checked the locks. I had even put a wooden dowel rod in the track of the sliding glass door. An old trick my dad taught me to stop it from being forced open. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It wasn't a text. It was a notification from my security system. I had installed a camera on the back patio 2 days earlier, specifically because of the rumors. Motion detected. Back patio. I grabbed my phone. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I opened the app. The feed loaded. It was grainy, black and white night vision. At first, I didn't see anything. Just the gray concrete of the patio and the black void of the yard. Then, the motion sensor light on the camera clicked on. He was there. A man, wearing dark clothing. A hoodie pulled up. He was standing right in front of my door. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was leaning forward, cupping his hands around his eyes, pressing his face against the glass of my living room door. He was trying to see inside. I watched, frozen, as he scanned my living room. He was looking at my TV, my couch, my life. Then he reached down. I saw his hand grasp the handle of the door. He pulled. The door shuddered, but the lock and the dowel rod held firm. He didn't give up. He pulled again, harder. I heard the thump-thump of the metal frame hitting the lock all the way upstairs. That snapped me out of it. I didn't call 911, not yet. I did something stupid, something fueled by 2 weeks of fear and anger. I grabbed the baseball bat. I ran down the stairs. I wanted to catch him. I wanted to scare him off. I wanted to make him stop. I flew down the stairs and burst into the living room. I flipped the patio light switch. The sudden light illuminated him perfectly. He was taller than I expected, thin. He looked startled. He jumped back from the glass. I unlocked the door and threw it open. "Hey!" I screamed. "Get the hell out of here!" He stood there on the edge of the patio, about 10 feet away from me. He didn't run. He just looked at me. His eyes were wide, but not scared. They looked empty, like a shark's eyes. "What are you doing?" I yelled, stepping out onto the concrete, gripping the bat. That's when he reached into his pocket. I expected a flashlight. I expected him to blind me again. Instead, I saw a flash of silver. He pulled out a knife. It wasn't a small pocket knife. It looked like a kitchen knife, maybe 6 inches long. The patio light caught the blade. My stomach dropped. The anger evaporated, replaced by cold, hard terror. This wasn't a peeping Tom anymore. This was a man prepared to kill. He didn't say a word. He just took a step toward me. He swung the knife in a lazy arc, slashing the air between us. It was a warning. "Back off!" I froze. I raised the bat, but my arms felt like lead. We stood there for what felt like an eternity. Just 2 men on a freezing patio in Gaithersburg. One defending his home, the other defending his right to invade it. Then, just as quickly as it started, he turned. He sprinted toward the woods. I didn't chase him. I slammed the door shut, locked it, put the dowel rod back in, and dialed 911 with trembling fingers. "He has a knife," I told the dispatcher. "He's armed." The police arrived in force this time. I'm talking 5 cruisers, lights blazing. They took my statement. They watched the camera footage. When they saw the knife, the mood shifted. This wasn't a nuisance call anymore. This was first-degree assault. "We're going to get him," an officer told me. "We have a description now. We have a pattern." But Stephen Adams didn't stop. 5 days later, January 20th, the police were ready. They knew he liked the tiny imitations of nature, the drainage ditches, the wood lines. They didn't just send patrol cars. They sent the air support unit. They launched a drone, a high-tech thermal imaging drone that can see body heat from hundreds of feet in the air. While Adams was creeping through a neighborhood in Durwood, thinking he was invisible in the shadows, the drone was tracking him. He was doing it again. The drone operator watched as Adams walked up to a ground-floor apartment window. He watched as Adams pressed his face to the glass. He watched as Adams exposed himself. The drone operator radioed the units on the ground. "Suspect is at the rear of Building 4. He is peering into the window." The net closed in. When the officers swarmed, Adams ran. But you can't outrun a drone. They caught him in the woods. They tackled him. When they searched him, they found the kit, the flashlight, the dark clothes. And just like that, the reign of the flashlight stalker was over. I watched the news report the next day. They showed his mugshot. Stephen Jerez Adams, 32 years old. He looked so normal, just a guy. If you saw him at the grocery store, you wouldn't look twice. But then they listed the charges: first-degree assault, peeping Tom, indecent exposure, trespassing. The first-degree assault charge was the big one. In Maryland, that carries up to 25 years. They slapped him with that because of the knife incident. Because when he swung that blade at me, or at the other victim on McCullough Lane, he showed that he wasn't just there to look. He was willing to destroy. It's been a few weeks since the arrest. The neighborhood is quiet again, but it's not the same. The aquarium effect is broken. We can't unknow what we know. I don't leave my blinds open anymore, not even during the day. We put a frosted film over the lower half of the sliding glass door, so light comes in, but nobody can see in. I spent $3,000 on a privacy fence, 6 feet tall, no gaps. Sarah still has trouble sleeping. Every time the wind blows a branch against the siding, she jumps. We talk about moving, getting away from the ground floor. Maybe a high-rise condo where nobody can look in unless they can fly. Because the truth is, the police caught Stephen Adams, but they didn't catch the fear. Every time I walk into my kitchen at night to get a glass of water, I have to force myself not to look at the glass door. Because I know that somewhere out there are other people like him. People who realize that the suburbs are just a collection of glass boxes filled with unsuspecting victims. And all it takes is a flashlight to turn your sanctuary into a stage. So, do me a favor. Tonight, when you're sitting in your living room, scrolling through your phone or watching TV, take a look at your window. Is it dark outside? Is your light on? Can you see what's in your yard? Or can you only see your own reflection staring back at you? And if you look closely, really closely, is there a shadow standing just behind your reflection? Go check your locks. This story serves as a reminder that the most terrifying things aren't always supernatural. Sometimes it's just a human being with a broken moral compass and a flashlight. If you have a story about a peeping Tom, a stalker, or a home invasion, send it to the email in the description below. Stay safe, keep your blinds closed, and I'll see you in the next video.